The lecture hall was massive. It could hold over 300 students from dozens of different species. Some had scales, some had fur, some floated in special containers because they were made of gas. Some had so many eyes that counting them would take all day. Professor Vethkan walked to the center of the room. He was a Relaxian, which meant he had blue-green scales that changed color with his mood and 4 thin arms that moved like dancing snakes. He had been teaching survival sciences at the Galactic Academy for 40 years. He knew everything about every dangerous planet in the known universe. Or so he believed. "Good morning, students," he said. His voice came through a small translator device on his chest. Without it, his words would sound like clicking and hissing. "Today we will discuss a very important topic. We will talk about why humans cannot survive Deathworld certification training." A holographic image appeared in the middle of the room. It showed a blue and green planet with white clouds. It looked beautiful. It looked peaceful. "This is Earth," the professor said. "The human homeworld. It is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld." Some students made sounds of surprise. A Class 12 was extremely dangerous. Most species came from Class 2 or Class 3 worlds. Anything above Class 8 was considered almost impossible to survive. "Earth has earthquakes that destroy cities," Vethkan continued. "It has massive storms that can tear buildings apart. It has oceans full of creatures that eat anything they can catch. It has diseases that spread through the air. The planet is constantly trying to kill everything on it." He paused and looked around the room. And humans evolved there. They survived there for hundreds of thousands of years before they ever built spaceships. A student in the front row raised a tentacle. She was a Quelix, a species that looked like a mixture of octopus and jellyfish. "Professor, if humans survived on such a dangerous world, would they not be perfect for Deathworld training?" Vethkan made a sound that was something like a laugh. His mandibles clicked together 3 times. "That is what everyone thinks at first, but you are wrong. Let me explain why." He changed the holographic display. Now it showed numbers and charts, statistics, data from 100 years of Deathworld certification programs. The Deathworld certification training is the hardest survival test in the galaxy. Only the best soldiers, explorers, and scientists attempt it. They must survive for 18 days on a deadly planet with almost no supplies. They must reach an extraction point while facing terrible conditions: heat, cold, radiation, predators, poison. Everything wants to kill them. The students listened carefully. Many of them dreamed of attempting the certification one day. It was the highest honor a survival specialist could achieve. "Now look at this," Vethkan said. He pointed to one section of the data. "Human candidates have a 94% dropout rate, the highest of any species in the Galactic Compact." Murmurs spread through the hall. 94%, that was almost everyone. "But why?" asked a Gorath student. He was huge, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor. His species was known for being almost impossible to kill. "Humans are from a death world. They should be strong." "Strength is not the problem," Vethkan explained. "Humans are surprisingly strong for their size. They can run for hours without stopping. They can survive injuries that would kill most species. They heal faster than almost anyone." "Then what is the problem?" The professor's scales shifted to a darker shade. This meant he was being very serious. "Psychology," he said. "The human mind is broken." He showed more data on the screen: brain scans, psychological evaluations, reports from past training exercises. Humans do not have proper fear responses. When most species see danger, their bodies tell them to run or hide. This is good. This keeps them alive. But humans are different. When humans see danger, sometimes they run toward it. Some students laughed nervously. Running toward danger sounded insane. "This is not a joke," Vethkan said firmly. "I have seen the records. Human candidates do not follow safety protocols. They take risks that no reasonable being would take. They ignore warnings. They push themselves past all physical limits. That sounds useful in a survival situation, someone said. It sounds useful until they die, the professor replied. Humans do not know when to stop. They do not know when to give up. They keep pushing until their bodies fail completely. In the Deathworld training, this means they often injure themselves so badly in the first few days that they cannot continue. He pulled up video footage. It showed a human male trying to climb a cliff face in extreme heat. His hands were bleeding. His suit was damaged. Any sensible being would have found another path, but the human kept climbing until he fell. He survived, Vethkon said, but his injuries forced him to activate his emergency beacon. He was disqualified. More footage. A human female trying to fight a predator 3 times her size instead of hiding from it. Another human trying to cross a river of acid instead of going around it. Another human refusing to rest even though his vital signs showed he was close to death. Every single time, the professor said, humans fail because they do not respect their own limits. They do not listen to their bodies. They do not follow the rules that keep people alive. In the back row of the lecture hall, a young Crixian named Specialist Crix listened carefully. She was smaller than most of her species, with a sleek exoskeleton and sharp mandibles. She had joined the academy because she wanted to understand alien species. She wanted to learn what made them different. And something about this lecture bothered her. She made a note on her datapad. Professor says humans fail because they are reckless, but is reckless the same as brave? Need to find actual human to ask. She had never met a human before. They were rare in this part of the galaxy, but she had heard stories about them. Strange stories. Stories about humans doing impossible things. Stories about humans who simply refused to die. At the front of the room, Professor Vethkon was finishing his lecture. So remember this, he said. Humans are fascinating creatures. They come from a deadly world. They are physically capable, but their minds work against them. They cannot survive structured training because they cannot follow rules. They cannot accept that some things are impossible. He turned off the holographic display. Class dismissed. Next week we will discuss the Fenric and their approach to cold weather survival. Students began to leave. Crix stayed in her seat for a moment, still thinking. The professor sounded very confident. He had data to support his claims. But data was not the same as truth. Crix decided she would find a human someday and ask them directly. She wanted to know what they thought about impossible things. She had no idea that her chance would come much sooner than she expected. Commander Yeltris sat in her office and stared at the problem on her screen. She was a tall being with gray skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on her face. She had commanded the Galactic peacekeeping forces for 15 years. She had seen wars. She had seen disasters. She had seen things that would make most people go insane. But this problem was giving her a headache. The annual Deathworld certification exercise was in 2 weeks. 16 candidates would be dropped onto Kethris 7, one of the most dangerous planets in the sector. They would have 18 days to reach the extraction point. Most would fail. Some might die. That was normal. The problem was the teams were not balanced. "We need one more candidate," she said to Administrator Vone, who sat across from her desk. Vone was a Glishan, a species that looked like a blob of clear jelly with organs floating inside. He was in charge of all administrative matters for the training program. "We have candidates," Vone said. His voice bubbled through his membrane. "We have a waiting list of over 200. None of them qualify. The Oversight Committee requires representation from all compact species. We need a human." Vone's body quivered. This was his way of showing displeasure. "There is only one human who has applied, Marcus Cole. He has been applying for 3 years. Then accept him." Commander, we have rejected him every time for good reasons. Humans have the worst record in the history of this program. They always fail. They always get hurt. The liability alone would be enormous. Yeltris leaned back in her chair. I know the statistics, but the Oversight Committee does not care about statistics. They care about fairness. If we do not include a human, they will cancel the entire exercise. Perhaps that would be better than watching another human destroy himself. That is not your decision to make, or mine. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, stars drifted slowly past. The station orbited Kethris 7 at a safe distance, far enough that the deadly radiation and heat could not reach them. Fine, Vone finally said. I will send the acceptance notification, but I want it officially recorded that I opposed this decision. Noted. And when this human fails within the first 3 days, I want everyone to remember that I warned them. Also noted. Now please send the notification before I change my mind about being polite to you. Vone bubbled something that might have been a curse in his language and left the office. Marcus Cole was eating lunch when his datapad made a sound. He looked at the screen and almost dropped his food. No way, he whispered. He read the message 3 times to make sure he was not imagining things. Notification. Your application for Deathworld Certification Exercise 7 Kethris has been approved. Report to Station Orbital 9 in 14 standard days for briefing and equipment assignment. This approval is final and cannot be appealed. Marcus had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. 3 years of applications. 3 years of rejections. 3 years of being told that humans were not suitable for the program. And now, finally, they had said yes. What is wrong with your face? Marcus looked up. His friend Durgo was sitting across the table, staring at him with concern. Durgo was a Fenric, a species covered in thick brown fur with yellow eyes and claws that could cut through metal. Despite his frightening appearance, Durgo was one of the kindest beings Marcus had ever met. Nothing is wrong, Marcus said. Something is very, very right. He showed Durgo the datapad. Durgo's eyes went wide. Kethris 7, Marcus, that planet is death. The air is poison. The ground is lava. The rain will melt your skin. I know. You will not survive. Maybe, maybe not. Durgo grabbed Marcus by the shoulders. His claws were careful not to pierce the human's thin skin. Listen to me, brother. I have known you for 2 years. You are my friend. I do not want to watch you die on a screen while I sit safe up here. Marcus smiled. It was a strange smile, the kind that humans made when they were about to do something either very brave or very stupid. Durgo, I grew up on Earth. Do you know what that means? It means you are crazy. It means I have been surviving deadly things since the day I was born. My planet has hurricanes that level cities. It has earthquakes that open the ground and swallow buildings. It has animals that evolved specifically to eat humans. And you know what? We are still here, 8 billion of us. We did not just survive. We took over the whole damn planet. Durgo released his shoulders. But this is different. This is a controlled environment. There are rules. There are always rules, and humans have always been bad at following them. Marcus stood up and put his datapad in his pocket. I am going to do this, Durgo. I am going to show everyone that they are wrong about us. And if you die? Marcus shrugged. Then at least I died trying to prove something. That is better than living without trying at all. He walked away, leaving Durgo alone at the table. The Fenric watched his human friend leave. He did not understand humans. He did not think anyone really understood them. They were small and soft and fragile, but they acted like they were invincible. They knew they could die, but they did dangerous things anyway. It made no sense. But somewhere deep inside, Durgo felt something he had not expected to feel. He felt jealous. 2 weeks later, Marcus Cole stood in the equipment bay of Station Orbital 9. He was being fitted for a survival suit. The technician working on him was a small insectoid being with 6 arms, each one holding a different tool. "Your species has very strange proportions," the technician said. "Too much water in your body, too little armor on your skin. How do you survive anything?" "We are creative," Marcus said. "Creative is not the same as durable." "No, it is better." The technician made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been disgust. It was hard to tell. When the fitting was done, Marcus looked at himself in the mirror. The suit was white and gray, designed to reflect heat and filter out toxins. It had monitors that would track his vital signs and send data back to the station. It had a single red button on the chest. The emergency beacon. If he pressed that button, a shuttle would come to rescue him within minutes. He would be safe. He would survive. And he would be disqualified. Marcus stared at the button for a long time. "I am not going to press you," he said quietly. "No matter what happens down there, I am going to make it to the end or I am going to die trying." The button did not respond. Buttons never did. But Marcus felt better for saying it out loud. It made his promise real. In 14 days, he would stand on the surface of one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. He would face heat that could melt metal. He would face storms that could tear him apart. He would face things that no human had ever faced before. And he would not quit. He refused to be another statistic. He refused to prove everyone right about humans. He was going to change their minds or die in the attempt. Marcus Cole smiled at his reflection and walked out of the equipment bay. The clock was ticking. The deployment bay was cold and quiet. 16 beings stood in a line, waiting for the doors to open. They were the best survival specialists from across the galaxy. They had trained for years. They had passed hundreds of tests, and now they were about to face the ultimate challenge. Marcus Cole stood at the end of the line. He was the smallest person there. Next to him was a Goreth warrior named Threk. He was almost 3 meters tall and covered in natural armor plating that could stop bullets. His species lived on a high-gravity world where everything was trying to crush them. He looked at Marcus like someone might look at an insect. "Human," Threk said. His voice was deep like thunder. "You should not be here." "I get that a lot," Marcus replied. "You will die on the first day." "Maybe, but I plan to be very annoying before that happens." Threk made a sound that might have been a laugh, or it might have been a growl. Marcus could not tell the difference. On his other side was a Velisi named Sierra. She was not solid like the others. Her species existed as a cloud of gas contained within a special membrane suit. She floated a few centimeters off the ground, her form constantly shifting and swirling. "I have read about your species," Sierra said. Her voice was like wind through leaves. "You are fascinating." "Thank you. I mean that as a scientific observation. Humans should not exist. Your biology is inefficient. Your lifespan is short. Your bodies are fragile. And yet your species has spread across dozens of worlds in just a few centuries." "We are stubborn," Marcus said. "Stubborn does not explain it. There is something else, something the data does not capture." Before Marcus could respond, a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a scarred face with one eye missing and metal plates covering half the skull. This was Instructor Thal, a veteran who had survived 6 Deathworld campaigns. "Candidates," Thal said, "you have trained for this moment, you have dreamed of this moment. Now it is here." He did not smile. Marcus suspected he had forgotten how. "Below you is Kethris 7, Class 14 Deathworld. Surface temperature averages 900 degrees in daylight. The atmosphere contains toxic gases. The rain is acidic. The ground is unstable. There are predators that have evolved to hunt anything that moves." Some candidates shifted nervously. Marcus stayed still. You will be dropped at random locations across the southern continent. You have 18 days to reach the extraction point at the northern caldera. There are supply caches hidden across the surface. Finding them is your responsibility. The hologram showed a map of the planet. Red dots marked the drop zones. A single green dot marked the extraction point. The distance between them was enormous. There are no rules, Thal continued. You may work together or alone. You may share supplies or fight for them. The only thing that matters is reaching the extraction point before time runs out. He paused and looked directly at the candidates. Even through the hologram, his gaze was heavy. If you activate your emergency beacon, you are disqualified. If you die, you are disqualified permanently. Try not to do either. The hologram disappeared. The bay doors began to open. Heat rushed in like a living thing, even through his suit. Marcus could feel it pressing against him, trying to find a way in. The air shimmered and danced. Below, the surface of Kethris 7 glowed red and orange and yellow, like looking into the heart of a fire. "Begin," said Thal's voice over the speakers. The candidates jumped. Marcus hit the ground hard. His suit absorbed most of the impact, but he still felt the shock travel through his bones. He rolled to his feet and looked around. He was alone. The landscape was like nothing he had ever seen. Black rock stretched in every direction, broken by rivers of glowing lava. Geysers of steam erupted randomly from cracks in the ground. The sky was a sickly orange color, filled with ash and smoke. It was beautiful in a terrible way. His suit's computer showed him the direction of the extraction point. 300 kilometers north, 18 days to get there. That meant roughly 17 kilometers per day minimum. But walking in a straight line was impossible. The terrain was too dangerous. He would need to navigate around lava flows, avoid unstable ground, find water and shelter. The actual distance he would need to cover was probably twice that. Marcus did not panic. Panic was useless. Instead, he started walking. The first 3 days were hard for everyone. Threk the Goreth discovered that his armor, which protected him from almost everything, also trapped heat inside his body. He spent hours each day lying in cooler areas, trying not to overheat. His progress was slow. Sierra the Velissi almost died when a sudden pressure change nearly burst her containment membrane. She had to spend an entire day repairing it with emergency supplies. A pack of 4 Crixian hunters tried to take a shortcut through a predator territory. 2 of them were badly injured. They had to activate their emergency beacons. Disqualified. Marcus walked. He did not rush. He did not take risks. He watched the ground carefully before each step. He studied the patterns of the geysers. He learned to read the color of the lava to know how hot it was. At night, when the temperature dropped to merely unbearable instead of deadly, he found sheltered spots and rested. He did not sleep much. Sleeping too deeply on a Deathworld was a good way to never wake up. On day 4, he found his first supply cache. It was hidden under a rock formation that the other candidates had walked right past. Inside, he found water purification tablets and a broken navigation unit. The navigation unit was useless. Its circuits had been damaged by the heat. Any sensible person would have left it behind. Marcus sat down and started taking it apart. On the monitoring station above, Analyst Prel watched the human with confusion. "What is he doing?" she asked. Prel was a Relaxian like Professor Vethcon, with scales that shifted color based on emotion. Right now, they were pale blue with puzzlement. "It appears he is repairing the navigation unit," said her assistant. "That is impossible. The damage is too severe." "And yet he continues." They watched as Marcus worked with tiny tools from his survival kit. His hands moved with careful precision. He pulled wires from his suit's secondary systems. He used heat from a nearby vent to melt connections together. He worked for 6 hours without stopping. When he was done, the navigation unit flickered to life. It was not perfect. It showed only basic direction data, but it was working. "How did he do that?" Prell demanded. "I do not know. The repair should not have been possible with those materials." "Then how?" Her assistant thought for a moment. Perhaps he did not know it was impossible, so he did it anyway. Prell's scales shifted to a troubled gray. She had studied humans for years. She had read all the research. She thought she understood them. Now she was not so sure. On the screen below, Marcus Cole finished his water, packed his supplies, and started walking north again. He was already ahead of schedule. Day 9 began like any other. The sky burned orange. The ground trembled with distant volcanic activity. The air tasted like metal and ash even through the suit filters. Marcus had found a rhythm: walk during the cooler hours, rest during the worst heat, conserve water, conserve energy, keep moving forward, always forward. He had passed 3 more supply caches. He had food for another week. His water was low but manageable. His suit was damaged in several places, but he had patched the worst holes with volcanic glass and thermal tape. He was going to make it. Then the warning came. "All candidates, this is Instructor Thal. Seek shelter immediately. The flare will make planetfall in 6 hours." Marcus stopped walking. The flare. He had been briefed about this. Kethris 7 orbited an unstable star that occasionally released massive bursts of radiation. These solar ejections could cook anything on the surface in minutes. The briefing had said the flare was not expected for another 5 days. The briefing had been wrong. "Survival probability in open terrain is 0, Thal continued. "Find underground shelter. This is not a drill." The communication ended. Marcus looked around. He was standing on a flat basalt plain. There were no caves, no tunnels, no deep cracks in the ground. The nearest mapped shelter was over 20 kilometers away. He could not reach it in 6 hours, not even close. On the monitoring station, Commander Yeltris watched the situation develop with growing concern. "Where are the other candidates?" she asked. "Threk found a cave system 8 kilometers from his position," reported Analyst Prell. "He is moving toward it now. He will make it with time to spare." "Sierra." She descended into a deep crevasse. "The radiation will not reach her there." "The Crixian." "Moving toward a pre-mapped bunker. She is injured but making good progress." "And the human?" Prell's scales turned pale. "He is in the middle of an open plain. There is no shelter within reach." Yeltris closed her eyes. "Should we extract him?" "Only if he activates his beacon. Those are the rules." "The rules will get him killed." "The rules are the rules, Commander." They watched the screen in silence. The human was still standing there, looking around at the empty landscape. His vital signs showed elevated heart rate and stress hormones, but not panic. He was thinking. Then he started to move. "He is running," Prell said, "but not toward any shelter. He is running toward nothing." "What is he doing?" No one had an answer. Marcus ran across the basalt plain until he found what he was looking for: a narrow crack in the rock, barely wider than his body. It was not deep enough to be a real shelter. The radiation would still reach him, but it was something. He dropped to his knees and started digging. The rock was hard. His hands bled through his gloves, but he kept digging, using a sharp piece of volcanic glass as a tool. He widened the crack. He deepened it. He made space for his body. Then he started gathering materials. Rocks, debris, sheets of volcanic glass, chunks of hardite from a nearby formation. He dragged everything to the crack and started building a cover, layer after layer, rock on top of rock. "It will not be enough," Analyst Prell said, watching from above. "The radiation will penetrate those materials." "Then why is he doing it?" "I do not know." 4 hours later, Marcus had built something that looked like a grave, a shallow trench covered with rocks and glass and debris. It was not a shelter. It was barely a hiding spot. But Marcus was not done. He climbed into the trench and pulled the last layer of rocks over himself. Then he did something that no one on the monitoring station had ever seen before. He closed his eyes and started breathing slowly, very slowly. His heart rate dropped, his body temperature lowered, his oxygen consumption fell to almost nothing. "What is happening?" Prell demanded, staring at the readings. "His vitals are crashing." "No," said Dr. Quellis, the team's medical expert. "They are not crashing, they are controlled. He is slowing his own body down." "That is impossible. Humans cannot do that." "Apparently this one can." They watched in disbelief as Marcus Cole put himself into a state that was somewhere between sleep and death. His body was barely functioning. His mind was somewhere far away. He had become still and cold and quiet, like a stone. The flare hit Kethris, 7, like the anger of a dying god. The sky turned white. The ground cracked and melted. The temperature rose so high that rocks began to glow. Anything on the surface that was not protected would be dead in seconds. In caves and crevasses and bunkers, the other candidates huddled and waited. Their suits screamed warnings. Their bodies trembled with fear. They could feel the flare even through the rock, a terrible pressure that seemed to crush them from all directions. In his shallow grave, covered by rocks, Marcus Cole did not move. His suit was failing. The outer layers were burning away. Radiation was seeping through the cracks in his cover. By all measurements, he should have been dying. But his body was so slow, so still, that the damage was not accumulating the way it should. His cells were barely active. His systems were barely running. He was not alive in the normal sense. He was waiting. 12 hours later, the flare passed. The sky returned to its normal sickly orange. The temperature dropped back to merely unbearable. On the monitoring station, everyone held their breath. "Is he alive?" Yeltris asked. Prell checked the readings. I think so. His vitals are starting to rise again." "How?" "I do not know. He should be dead. The radiation exposure alone should have killed him 10 times over." On the screen, the pile of rocks began to move. A hand pushed through the debris, then an arm, then a body. Marcus Cole pulled himself out of his grave and stood up. His suit was destroyed, hanging in pieces from his body. His skin was red and blistered. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked like something that had crawled out of a nightmare. But he was standing. He checked his supplies. His water was gone, evaporated by the heat. His food was ruined. His navigation unit was a melted lump of metal. He had nothing left except his body and his will. Marcus looked north, toward the extraction point that was still over 100 kilometers away. He could not see it. He could not even imagine it. All he could see was the endless burned landscape stretching to the horizon. He started walking. Back on the station, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, Analyst Prell broke the silence. "How is he still moving? He has no supplies. His suit is gone. He should be dying." Commander Yeltris watched the screen with an expression that might have been fear or might have been wonder. "I think," she said slowly, "that no one ever told him he should be dying, so he forgot to do it." The human continued walking north. One step at a time. One impossible step after another. Day 17. The monitoring station had become very quiet. No one joked anymore. No one complained about long shifts. Everyone just watched the screens and waited. Of the 16 candidates who had started the exercise, only 4 were still in the field. Threk the Gorath had made it to the final approach of the northern caldera, but his body finally gave up. The heat had been too much for too long. His emergency beacon activated automatically when his heart stopped beating. The medical team saved him, but he was disqualified. Sierra the Velocity had been caught manipulating the atmosphere to cool herself down. This was against the rules. She was disqualified. The last Crixian, a female named Crix, was still moving, but she was badly hurt. Her exoskeleton was cracked in several places. Fluid leaked from her joints. She was crawling more than walking. And Marcus Cole was gone. "We lost his signal 2 days ago," Analyst Prell reported. Her voice was tired. "His suit stopped transmitting after the flare. We have no way to track him." "Is he dead?" asked Commander Yeltris. "We do not know. He never activated his beacon. But without a suit, without supplies, without water, survival is impossible." "Impossible," Yeltris repeated. She had heard that word a lot during this exercise. It was starting to lose its meaning. "We should declare him deceased and send a recovery team." "No, we wait until the exercise is over. Those are the rules." Prell wanted to argue, but she knew it was pointless. The rules were the rules. Instructor Thal stood at the extraction point and watched the horizon. He had been running these exercises for 18 years. He had seen 3 candidates complete the course in all that time. 3 out of hundreds. They had all been elite soldiers from species designed for extreme environments. A human completing the course was impossible. A human completing it without a functional suit was laughable. A human completing it without any supplies at all was the kind of story that drunk pilots told in bars, not something that happened in reality. And yet, Thal had read the reports. He had seen the footage. He had watched Marcus Cole bury himself alive to survive a solar flare. He had watched the human dig himself out 12 hours later and start walking again. Part of Thal, a small part that he would never admit to, was hopping. "Sir." One of his aides was pointing toward the southern ridge. Something was moving there, a dark shape against the orange sky. It was too far away to identify, too small, too slow. But it was moving toward them. Thal raised his binoculars and looked. The figure was human-shaped. It was covered in ash and dried blood. It wore scraps of what had once been a survival suit, mixed with pieces of volcanic rock and strips of material that Thal did not recognize. It was carrying something on its back. "Medical team to the extraction point," Thal said into his communicator. "Now." Marcus Cole walked the final kilometer in a daze. He did not remember most of the last 8 days. He remembered heat. He remembered pain. He remembered putting one foot in front of the other over and over until the motion became automatic. He remembered finding Crix. She had been lying in a crater, unable to move. Her exoskeleton was shattered. Her internal fluids were leaking out. She was dying. Any sensible person would have left her. She was too heavy to carry. She would slow him down. He had no supplies to share. Helping her would probably kill them both. Marcus had picked her up anyway. He did not remember why. He did not remember deciding to do it. He just remembered that leaving her felt wrong, and so he had not done it. He had sealed her wounds with hardite paste from a supply cache. He had built a harness from his ruined suit. He had strapped her to his back and kept walking. For 8 days. 80 kilometers. With nothing but his own 2 feet and a refusal to stop. The medical team reached them before Marcus reached the extraction point. "Put her down," a doctor said. "We need to treat her immediately." Marcus lowered Crix carefully to the ground. His arms were shaking. His legs were shaking. Everything was shaking. "Is she alive?" he asked. His voice was a croak. He had not spoken in days. "Barely. You got her here just in time. A few more hours and she would have been gone." Marcus nodded. That was good. That was what mattered. He looked up and saw Instructor Thal standing a few meters away, watching him. "Made it," Marcus said. "She needs medical. I need a drink." Thal did not smile, but something in his expression changed, something that might have been respect. "You were supposed to be dead," Thal said. I get that a lot. Your suit failed, your supplies were gone, you had no water for 8 days. You carried another candidate for 80 kilometers across a Deathworld. How? Marcus thought about the question. It was a good question. He was not sure he had a good answer. I did not want to die, he said finally, and I did not want her to die either, so I kept walking. That is all. That is not all. That is impossible. Then I guess impossible is not as impossible as people think. Thal stared at him for a long moment. Then he did something that Marcus had never seen him do before. He smiled. Welcome to the 3%, Cadet Cole. You have passed the Deathworld certification with honors. 2 months later, Professor Vethcon stood before his class at the Galactic Academy. His scales were a troubled shade of gray. He had been dreading this lecture. I told you, he began, that humans cannot survive Deathworld training. I showed you statistics. I explained their psychology. I was very confident. He paused and looked at his students. Many of them already knew what was coming. The story had spread across the galaxy in weeks. I was wrong. He activated the holographic display. It showed footage from Kethris 7, a human crawling through fire, a human burying himself alive, a human carrying an injured alien on his back across an endless burning landscape. Humans do have fear, Vethcon said quietly. I was right about that, but I was wrong about what they do with it. They do not obey their fear. They do not let it control them. They acknowledge it and then they ignore it. The footage showed Marcus Cole walking the final steps to the extraction point, burned, broken, barely alive. Still standing. And when their own survival is not enough motivation, Vethcon continued, they find something else to survive for, someone else, a stranger, a rival. It does not matter. They will carry that person to safety even if it kills them. He turned off the display. I have been teaching for 40 years. I thought I understood every species in the galaxy, but I did not understand humans. I am not sure anyone does. A student raised a hand. Professor, what should we learn from this? Vethcon thought for a moment. His scales shifted through several colors before settling on a warm blue. Learn this, he said. When a human tells you something is impossible, do not believe them, because they will probably do it anyway just to prove a point. The lecture hall was silent. Class dismissed, said Vethcon. I have some old research to revisit, and perhaps a letter to write. 6 months later, Marcus Cole returned to the Galactic Academy. But this time, he was not a candidate. He was an instructor. Specialist Crick stood beside him as he faced his first class of survival students. She had fully recovered from her injuries. Her exoskeleton had healed. She had requested a permanent assignment as his liaison. She will keep me humble, Marcus explained to Commander Yeltris. I doubt anything could do that, Yeltris replied. Now Marcus looked at the faces of his students. Gorath warriors, Velisi clouds, Quelix tentacles, Crixians like Crix, and in the back, 2 humans who had applied for the program after hearing his story. I am not going to tell you that the Deathworld certification is easy, Marcus said. It is not. I am not going to tell you that anyone can pass it. They cannot. He walked to the center of the room. But I am going to tell you something that nobody told me, something that I had to learn the hard way. The students leaned forward. The only thing that is truly impossible, Marcus said, is the thing you decide not to try. Everything else is just difficult. He smiled. Now let us begin.